No one is talking about this, as there's one thing in particular with the New York Rangers happening this summer that they must sort out before the season starts. And we also have some other updates as it pertains to some of the younger players, not just on the New York Rangers, but that are coming up through the system, the Rangers farm system. We're going to break that all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 77% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, this channel is built for blue shirt fandom, and this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content, especially as the season gets closer and closer to starting. We're just a month away from preseason at this point. It's pretty exciting. But Bret, there's one thing we got to talk about with the New York Rangers that I haven't seen out there at all. I came across it by accident, to be honest, when I was looking through Puckpedia. And that is that, we know they're in an interesting spot when it comes to, how much salary cap space they have. They're right up against it. If they wanted to sign one more league minimum contract, they absolutely could do that. But then you're playing with fire. You'd have about $20,000 left in cap space, and you can't do really anything with that. So we know their cap situation, and we know that everyone's pretty much locked up on the main roster. You have some PTOs coming in, like obviously Connor Sherry, who we covered, and obviously there could be some more PTOs coming. You don't know who's going to make the team on the wings. There's a lot of, some of the younger guys are really pushing for those spots. But one thing I thought was interesting when looking through the goaltending is Dylan Garand doesn't have a contract. He's an RFA still, and he needs a contract. Now, this is not going to take a big chunk out of the salary cap, right? Like it really isn't. And he's not going to get an NHL deal, of course. Like he's going to be the starting goaltender for the Hartford Wolfpack this year because, of course, the Rangers have their goaltending solidified. But I think this should be probably a bigger story. And not just the fact that he doesn't have a contract, but the player himself. I feel like he is the future of goaltending for the New York Rangers. Maybe not as a starter, right? Shesterkin's still here for a long time, and they backed up the Brinks truck for him a lot. But there was this article that came out about, how Garand feels about his future, the past coming through the WHL and some of the experience he's gotten. But Bret, I want to throw it over to you. What do you make of Dylan Garand? To me, this is the guy who's going to take over next season as the backup goalie, and I think that he is the future of goaltending for this team. And you don't have to rush to pay him, but get him a contract so we don't get some feelings hurt, I guess, because we know there's a history of that within the organization.
Yeah, you certainly need to get Garand wrapped up here. Looking at the Rangers goaltending situation, Darius, obviously Shesterkin is going to be here for a long time, the NHL's highest paid goaltender, and we expect him to bounce back and live up to that contract. And Jonathan Quick, Quickie is back for one more season. We both believe that after this year he will retire, and I hope and believe he will bounce back as well. What we saw from him in the 2023-24 season, maybe an outlier. He sort of turned back the clock. He was just dominant that season as Igor's backup, 18-6, a low goals against average, high save percentage. So he sort of turned back the clock there. Not exactly looking for that type of production, but definitely, a step up from what we saw this past season. At his age, 40 years old, you can't expect that much more. But Garand is certainly the future. 23 years of age, will be Igor's backup, in my opinion. You just spoke about the WHL journey. I mean, he won goaltender of the year in the WHL. Not only that, he's coming off an all-star appearance with the Hartford Wolfpack, coming off a much better season in the AHL this past season than he had the year prior. That was concerning. Not a very good year for him in the 23-24 season. But this is certainly a player that the Rangers need to get under control. He's got some size limitations, but certainly will be Igor's backup moving forward, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that heading into next season, there was a lot of question marks about Jonathan Quick, like you brought up, even returning this coming season. Obviously, they signed him to a contract extension. He will be the backup this year, which I don't think is a bad thing for Garand to get another year, really comfortable, get that confidence up because, like you mentioned 2 seasons ago, not the greatest, but he's had a lot of really cool experiences. He played for Team Canada at the World Championships this year. He got to play with guys like Crosby, McKinnon, get the experience from that, getting selected by Kyle Dubas to represent that team. I think that's a high honor, right? So, he was able to do that. He was the CHL goaltender of the year, like you mentioned one year. And he said that his next goal is to make the New York Rangers. And you brought up his season last year. He had a fantastic season with the Hartford Wolfpack, who, didn't have a fantastic season as a whole as a team, and that, we've talked about it ad nauseum before, as a development program, not ranked very highly across the league. But look at the last couple of years, very average goaltending from Dylan Garand with Hartford, but last season in a very large sample size, a 9.13, and obviously the goals against average speaks for itself as well, the best of his career so far. So really playing a lot better. The statistics show that. You can see that the confidence is there. And let's keep in mind, even in the NHL, league average save percentage at this point is like a 900, 901. So he's putting up a 913 in the AHL. I think that's good. And obviously there is a gap between that and the NHL, but look what he's doing in the playoffs for the Hartford Wolfpack the last couple of years as well. When we know everyone brings their level up, he does as well. The save percentage is absolutely unbelievable. So I think that he is the goaltender of the future to back up Shesterkin. I think that the Rangers, in terms of goaltending, are in very good hands. I think that also plays into Connor McDavid and his decision next season. We've talked about that too. You can say, hey, we got two solid goaltenders as a tandem here. We can offer that. So it is pretty interesting. But Bret, any final thoughts on Dylan Garand? Again, I think he is the goaltender of the future. He's continuing to get his confidence up, and his play speaks for itself in the AHL.
Yeah, so my final thoughts when it comes to Garand, I like that you brought these statistics up here because, last year obviously was his best season in the AHL, but even during the 22-23 and the 23-24 season where he wasn't playing at his peak performance, he certainly elevated his game come postseason time, and you saw that 176 goals against average in 22-23. The numbers speak for themselves there. Like I said, the regular season may have not been the best those years, but he elevated his performance in the postseason like we've seen Igor Shesterkin do. And the last thing I want to say is that whenever I talk about the size limitations when it comes to Garand, 6'1", 176 pounds as a goaltender, not the biggest, not as big as you would like to be for that position, but Igor also not the biggest goaltender, just a few pounds heavier, same height, but he does have those cat-like reflexes. He's extremely flexible and mobile and has that elite speed and skating. So there is some context there that has to be mentioned. But yeah, certainly the McDavid situation, the goaltending situation is a big thing when it comes to McDavid and Darius. Until he puts pen to paper, it's always going to be a scenario that could happen, not only for the Rangers, but for other teams as well. He's not locked up in Edmonton, but I am certainly looking forward to seeing Garand as a member of the Rangers here moving forward. They just got to do it. Chris Drury's got to put the pen to paper.
And obviously, you don't like to see any injuries, but they do happen over the course of a season. So maybe we see Dylan Garand in the NHL this year. And I do think that certainly he will be the backup, next season. So nobody's really talking about him. The fact that he doesn't have a contract or anything, just wanted to bring that to the forefront because I think it's a very interesting story. All this experience that he's gaining and the fact that, his play has been phenomenal in the AHL the last couple of years. And like you mentioned too, Connor McDavid, till pen's to paper, we're heading into September at this point. Nothing's gotten done. I think that's very interesting. But let's move on to some quick hits, some, news from around, not just the league, but obviously around what Rangers fans are talking about. And Forever Blue Shirts recently launched a daily fan poll series on social media. So shout out to that throughout the summer kind of thing. And, they were kind of asking who's going to be, who's going to break out next season kind of thing. And a lot of people are pointing fingers at Alexis Lafreniere. And I think this is interesting. And I'll give you the floor again here, Bret, that I think a lot of people are suspecting that Lafreniere is not only going to bounce back, but probably play up to his contract because bouncing back could mean a lot of things, right? So, he didn't have the greatest year last year by any means, especially after signing and putting pen to paper on that new contract. So what do you think of Alexis Lafreniere heading into next year? A lot of people, I think, are actually very optimistic, which I was kind of surprised about. Again, of course, there's a section of the fan base that thinks it's finished with him, but I don't think that's the case just yet. I would like to see one more season. And I am interested to see what he can do under Mike Sullivan as well.
Yeah, well, if you see the Rangers fans that participated in this poll, they're expecting Lafreniere to put up 60-plus points this season, which will be the best year of his career, even better than when he put up 57 points during that, Rangers Stanley Cup run, the President's Trophy. So they're expecting him to have his best season in the NHL, and boy, do I hope that's the case because that will mean good things for the Rangers. And there is some context I want to get to when it comes to Lafreniere because like I've said here on the channel, during a down year last year, he was definitely not at his best. Certainly after he signed that big contract, you saw the production dip. But in 5-on-5 play, at even strength, he was the Rangers' second leading scorer behind the Breadman. So there is something to be said there. And you just mentioned Sullivan, improving under Sullivan. They need to use Lafreniere on the power play. I said that is how, moving Mika around, moving him off that bumper a little bit, doing different things could help elevate his game, get him back on track. While Sullivan could do the same when it comes to Lafreniere, utilize him a bit more on that power play because we've seen him have success at even strength. He had more goals than Austin Matthews, Sam Reinhart, Alex Ovechkin, just to name a few in 5-on-5 play, which is extremely mind-boggling. I had to look at that statistic twice, but that just goes to tell you that on the man advantage, Lafreniere could unlock a few things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when looking back at last year, Peter Laviolette was very reluctant to change, and Lafreniere wasn't even getting a lot of time on power play one. Very seldomly did we see him on power play one, and it was probably because there was injuries, right? So I do wonder about that. That's another great point. And last thing before we wrap up here, which I think is actually very exciting. Unfortunately, we won't see him in the NHL this year, but we will see him in training camp, and that's Sean Barnhill, and he's the newly drafted, just this past draft, a month ago, 2 months ago at this point, 6'6" defenseman, and he will be joining MSU's lineup this year. He will be playing at MSU. He's the biggest defenseman on their blue line, and they have some big guys on the back end there for that team. And it sounds like he will be a top 4 defenseman for this team. So I think that's very exciting for Rangers fans. Any thoughts on this, Bret? Because again, I think this is going to be a great experience for the Rangers prospect, and I think that this guy will actually not only make an impact in the NHL, in the future. I think it could be coming sooner than we think. And Chris Drury sneakily is putting together a very big blue line. You got EJ Emery. I know you did a video, a couple days ago on some of the prospects as well. He's putting together a really big blue line, and I think that's a good thing heading into the future.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Look, Barnhill doesn't bring much offensive skill set, but it doesn't matter. The Rangers need a enforcer, and I believe Barnhill could be that guy. EJ Emery is a big guy, but he's not going to be that enforcer. He's still skinny. He's going to be a penalty kill specialist, which is what the Rangers are going to need. When it comes to Gavrikov, he's a big guy, but he's more of a shot blocker. So the Rangers could certainly use a big burly defenseman like Barnhill. And Chris Drury is starting to draft, he doesn't have anybody that's under 6 foot, it seems like, as his defenseman. He just wants twin towers all over the place, heavy hitters, and that's what Barnhill is going to bring. And also, if you want to give us a follow on X, give us a follow at Rangers Digest YT, because the conversation will continue over there and in the comment section.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, the conversation always continues. Let us know how you feel in the comments. You can find us on X. It's in the description and, of course, the pinned comment. So let us know how you feel about Dylan Garand. I think everyone's somewhat on the same page, but if you're not, let us know. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. And, of course, Sean Barnhill, Alexi Lafreniere, let us know about that. Do you think he's going to bounce back next season? I think that's an interesting one because, he's getting paid a lot of money now, so he's going to have to at least bounce back, but I hope that, he can take it to another level as well. Let us know how you feel in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.